Are we ready? Okay, it's 9:01, and Steve, good morning. What's up?
Good morning. I'm fine. I'm happy to be here. Third time of trying for the week. Thursday is the lucky charm. How are
Yeah,
you guys doing?
we doing
We are
good.
great. We're great. We're glad to have you here this morning, of course. As we speak about your book and as we speak about cricket, as Jams and I was chit chatting just before, we were saying that we aren't really cricket followers. However, we are grateful of the fact that we can have persons like yourself who are invested in the game, who love the game, and who could share their perspective of the game with us.
I'm very happy to be here. And did you mention Trent? Trent is in the studio?
Chance is right here, yeah, sitting next to me.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
he is.
figured so. I wonder if he played any cricket in his youth days. Could you ask him?
And Trent, you played any cricket? Yeah, he said, yeah. He said in school.
Oh, he
Yeah.
did.
Uh-huh.
Well, let me give him a little alert and the nation a little alert because Trent's father, Livingston Clement Sargent, I describe in my book as a father of Nevisian batsmanship. He was the first Nevisian who really made it regionally as a batsman, an outstanding player in his day from Cotton Ground Village. And he made Cotton Ground the first outlying district outside of Charlestown to become a cricketing powerhouse. Now, Trent, I know you don't know this because maybe you don't follow the history, but tomorrow, February 17th, makes it 55 years to the day since your father became the first Leeward Island batsman to score 100 against a touring team. That is the MCC, then known as the Merrily Born Cricket Club, now England. He made 127 at the St. John's Ground in 1968, 17th February. So I'm giving you a family alert. Tomorrow morning, your other brother should make Sarge breakfast. You have to come in the morning, so I'll assign you to do dinner, and your mom Mildred, she will do everything in between. How
Yeah,
about that?
he's here chuckling, so
Yeah, he
I
he's
is.
enjoying
imagine.
that.
I know
Yeah.
him well.
Yes, very well it seemed. His mother and father.
So Steve, the book, okay, give
Yeah.
give us the name of the book and tell us what brought about your desire to do a biography on Mr. Willett.
Well, here's a book. I received my personal copy and a few others last Saturday from Amazon. It's called The Father, Son, and Offsprings, The Enchanting Story of Nevis Cricket from 1945 to 2023. So even though Willett is a significant character in all of this, it's not just about Willett. It tracks the game from 1945 to the present.
Mm-hmm.
In 1945, after World War II, that's when cricket became organized. Before that, people played in the village green, in the road, and all of that. But it found structure in 1945. Now, Willett, as I said, is a central figure who in 1973, on the 9th of March, became the first Nevisian and the first Leeward Islander to play Test cricket for the West Indies. The West Indies had apartheid. They didn't call it by that name. The game entered the region through Guyana in South America, not through the West Indies proper. And Guyana has six distinct ethnic groups: whites, blacks, Portuguese, Indians, Chinese, and Amerindians. And only white people could play the game because it was played on the plantations, say at Berbice. And eventually, the game spread up the archipelago, first to Trinidad, Barbados, and lastly to Jamaica, which is, of course, way up north. And the islands in between were seen as significant. Those four places were known as the Big Four. And so players from these islands didn't get an opportunity to play for the West Indies. Way back in 1953, for instance, Theodore Ted
Mm-hmm.
Hobson, the lawyer who became the first Nevisian player to tour with the Leeward Islands team. and that was to Bermuda in what was called a goodwill tour. They were designed to spread the game through the region. And then in 1953, the same Ted Hobson, Victor Eddy of St. Kitts, and a player called Stanley Thompson, and a player from Antigua called Hubert and Tannerson were flown to Guyana, or maybe it was both then, but they were sent to the Guyana to try out in front of the West Indies selectors. Well, try out, they didn't get selected because the Big Four dominated. And so Willett, in 1973, made the breakthrough for the islands, the smaller islands. So he broke down psychological, geographical barriers. They didn't call it apartheid. They called it discrimination. They called it insularity. And then the next year, in March, exactly 1 year after Willett, Andy Roberts from Antigua, and later that year, Viv Richards. And then, of course, Willett was followed by 6 other Nevisians in Derek Parry, Keith Atherton, Stuart Williams, Carl Tuckett, Ronako Morton, and Kyron Powell. Now, where else in the world can you find an island 36 square miles, 11,000 people producing 7 international cricketers? Take, for instance, Antigua. Antigua didn't produce a test cricketer after being involved in Leeward Islands cricket for 61 years. Nevis did it when they were at the 24-year marker. And I'm not hitting on you guys across there, but after 110 years, there has not been a Kittian male player to have played for the West Indies. Congratulations to the young female from the Sandy Point High School who played for the under-19.
So
All
Steve,
of that is not St. Kitts' fault. It is because of the prevailing circumstances of the day where only Big Island people could play for the West Indies.
but Steve,
And so when I looked at the landscape, I figured that Nevis has to be one of the most precious pieces of cricketing real estate in the world. Only 2 places that I could think of in the Caribbean, Barbados, which is a Mecca, 166 square miles, so that would be about 4.5 times the size of Nevis. They have produced more cricketers than any other place, probably on planet Earth. And then there's a place in Guyana called Port Morant, which also has been prolific. But then remember I told you that the game took roots in Guyana. As we could see from the last CPL, Guyanese are the most cricket-loving people in the region. So when I took everything into consideration, I figured the Nevis story had to be written. Why this time? It will be 50 years in another 2 weeks since Willett made that historic feat. And so I wrote the book to coincide with March 9th, 2023. The Nevis Cricket Association on that night will be having a gala at the Malcolm Gishard Park entitled Classy at 50. And we're having people coming in from all the territories involved in Leeward Islands cricket. That is, in a nutshell, is why I wrote the book.
okay, Steve, I want you to weigh in on, because I've always and imagine me who, I kind of just follow cricket kind of peripherally. I always wondered, Nevis probably, well, firstly, Nevis probably has the most cricketers per capita of any country. I think I heard that one time. And
But that's the point I just made.
yes, and the
That's
other thing
exactly
is,
the point.
what do you think accounts? What do you think accounts for the fact that Nevis has done so well at getting people onto the West Indies team and St. Kitts hasn't?
Well, you see, cricket is not just a game. Wherever cricket is played, it is used as a form of political and social dialogue, cultural expression, and also resistance. I think Nevisians fell in love with cricket around 1969. 1969 is when Willett came onto the scene as a 16-year-old student at a 7th standard student at the Charlestown Boys School. He's the only one of the Nevisian players who have never gone to a high school. There is a myth that his headmaster, Stanford Boncapo, kept him back, not allowing him to go to high school because he was such a precious commodity. But when you look at where the school was located, downstairs the Charlestown Methodist Church in Charlestown, not a lot of space, But in those days, Willett and Al Libert, those guys dominated school cricket. So the game took really serious roots in 1969 because Willett went to Antigua to play against other Leeward Islands territories. His first match was against Montserrat. And that was a very interesting tournament. As a matter of fact, chapter 4, I think, is called 1969 Revisited, because there were very important circumstances which took place in that tournament. First, Vivi Richards at age 17 was making his debut for Antigua and playing against St. Kitts, and got out to a bowler called John Bowie. And he resented that decision, stamped around on the ground, and the match had to be abandoned. The authorities ordered Viv Richards to come back to the crease because he was such a star in the making. And he batted 3 times in that innings and didn't score a single run. So that is a marker. We know Viv Richards went on to become a world beater, the Master Blaster. And then in the final match of the season, Nevis was playing against Antigua for the championship game. And Nevis was 182 for 2 when Trent's father, Livingston Sargent, was on 68. And another player, Alfred Howell, was on 86. And it looked as if we were going to beat Antigua for the first time in Antigua. And just before lunch, 10 minutes before lunch, Howell was given out in very questionable circumstances. Trent's father urged him to stay at the crease because he felt he was being cheated. In those days, you didn't have neutral umpires. The umpires came from the territory in which you were playing in. And it was well known that they gave advantage to the home team. The crowd invaded the field. Police had to get the Nevis team securely off the field, took them to the hotel. The crowd followed the cricketers to their hotel, banging on the windows of the lobby and saying, "Where is Shield? Where is Shield gone?" Because Nevis was a bit of an unknown entity. As a matter of fact, the then president of the Nevis Cricket Association, the late Eugene Walwyn, was also Attorney General of the first Attorney General of the Associated States of St. Kitts, Nevis, and Willis, of a very powerful man, had to go through Robert Bradshaw to organize a charter to get the Nevis team out of Montserrat, out of Antigua. Some players even had to go through Montserrat to get to Nevis because everybody, including the fans, could not fit on the charter. When the plane came in, there was a spontaneous motorcade from then Bambouche Airport into Grove Park, going first through Cotton Ground, the first known sporting motorcade in the island of Nevis. So people took a lot of interest. And then, of course, there was the Christina disaster. And it impacted a lot of people. A lot of people in St. Kitts blamed the Bradshaw administration for negligence. Whitman Brown has explored that in the 4 books he has written. And it is then that Nevisians decided that they would use cricket as a tool primarily against St. Kitts. And so by 1971, we won the tournament for the second time. We first won in 1955. And Willett's mother prophesied that Nevis would never win again until her son played for Nevis. And Willett was on that team, breaking a record, taking 36 wickets in 3 matches. And Willett, as a star, was born. So in 71, people really took great interest in the game. Every youngster wanted to be a Van Samry, a Livingston Sargent, a Willett, and Ed Atherton, who was Willett's first captain. And so the game really took root there, and we have never looked back. Now, in those days, Nevis was a very agrarian society, so everybody did farming. There were no basketball courts. There was no cable television, which came in 1988. And so all that Nevisian boys did, not girls, they didn't play it in those days, was to play cricket. And Nevis has not been indulged in too many sports. St. Kitts, of course, has had Kim Collins, Delaney, etc. Nevis has had, of course, Kim Collins and Maritza Williams. But just recently, 5 years ago, for instance, we got a Mondo track. So Nevis has been single-minded in terms of playing cricket. There were no cinemas, no distractions. People played cricket from sun up to sundown. And so cricket became part of the Nevis identity, a religion even.
Okay, that's. I'm here listening to all the history that you have given as it relates to the cricket playing, and it seems very fantastic as we look at the history of cricket in our federation and particularly in Nevis.
El Camino Willett
Yes.
is the subject of Steve Manners' new book, and you reference the offspring. Just tell us a little bit about the fruit not falling far from the tree, because I mean, as little as I know Tonito and I can't remember the other one's name.
Akito.
Akito, yeah. Tell us a little bit about the
So, Jamsa, I
offspring.
told you you knew more
Well,
than me.
I have to tell you about the father first.
Yes, yes.
In most of the Caribbean islands, for instance, there's a father figure to the game. At Kensington Oval in Barbados, for instance, there's a stand called the Innis Hewitt stand or the Hewitt Innis stand. Mitchie Hewitt is the father of Barbadian cricket because in the 1930s, when there was a lot of revolt in the Caribbean over worker rights and injustices and so on, which of course started with the Buckley's riot in St. Kitts, January 20th, 1935. That spread throughout the region. And Hewitt was the one who organized the Barbados Cricket League, which allowed ordinary people to play cricket. Now, Barbados is the most stratified of Caribbean countries. That's why we call it England. There's something called the Barbados White. Azad, I believe, may have studied there, so he will know that.
Yes, I
A lot of the
studied there.
businesses are owned by white people, and the people who worked in the sugarcane plantations didn't get much of a say. What Hewitt did was organize the Barbados Cricket League, which allowed the game to spread island-wide. Out of that became people like Garfield Soberts, Conrad Hunt, Claremont de Pisa, Charlie Griffith, who comes from the most rural parish of St. Lucie. And so the game was allowed to spread that way. Similarly, it happened in Nevis that there was a man called Johnny Howell. Most of you would know Tessa Howell. She's a frequent caller to radio shows. It's her grandfather. He was older than most of the other players, just as how Clive Lloyd was older than Richards and Roberts and all the other people he played with. So he fathered many of the young cricketers. Willett's first job and Derek Parry's first job was at his place. One working at a gas station in Willett, the other working in a lumber yard, because he had a little bit more resources than everybody else, and he helped the young players along. So we regard him as a father. As a matter of fact, what he used to do was to organize a boat and take players to non-traditional cricketing countries such as St. Martin, Statia, St. Thomas, Tortola, to spread the game. Because during that time, Nevisians were getting very little opportunity to play. Leeward Islands cricket started in 1913. You had St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla playing as one. You had Montserrat, you had Antigua Barbuda, and you had Dominica, which was at that time part of the British Leeward Islands. They left in 1940 and became part of the British Windward Islands. And that's where Nevis got a squeeze in. But during the period of time, Howell tried to grow the game by going to other territories outside of the Federation. He first played in 1926, and there were matches between St. Kitts and Nevis for the McNaughton Cup. But when it got time for St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla teams to be selected, most of the players came from St. Kitts. Nevis got 12th man and 13th man position. Anguilla, because it is more distant, never even got a look in. So that's why he is the father, and the pavilion at Grove Park is named in his honor. As a matter of fact, much of the money for that pavilion came from the Virgin Islands because they were so pleased with him for bringing the game to them. Then, of course, Willett is a son, and as we said, he broke down the geographical barriers and opened the door first for Derek Parry, and then for Louis Howell. And then, of course, Derek Parry became the father of the game. And then Keith Atherton, Stuart Williams, Carl Tuckett, Ronaldo Morton, and Kyron Powell. Sadly, we have not produced another player since Kyron Powell made his debut right there in St. Kitts in 2009. So we're going through a very thin period for the last 14 years.
Okay. Very interesting recollection of the game, played by father and son. And for some reason, I thought Powell, the last one, would have been much sooner. It seemed like much sooner. I can't believe it's 14 years since.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it has been some time. What would you say, or what would you say to young people who are interested in the game of cricket? What would you say to them?
Well, I'm going to say to them through El Camino Willet,
Mm-hmm.
because on Monday of this week, I collaborated with the Nevis Public Library to launch an exhibition. Same name as my book's title.
Yes.
I contacted them as early as May 22nd last year when the book, writing the book was just taking place. I'd done all the research and I asked them to partner with me for an exhibition for Black History Month. So it opened on Monday and will go to March 10th, the day after the 50th anniversary. At that ceremony, which I must say was a very impressive one, they have a great exhibition. The library staff has done a great work, and I'm encouraging clinicians to come over and have a look. Willett was interviewed by Curtis Morton right after the ceremony concluded and asked him the same question you just asked. And he lamented that Charlestown Primary School, for instance, the biggest school on the island with over 300 people, no cricket is being played. People don't have the passion. They've gotten a bit lazy. He said players are more concerned with the bling, wearing fancy shades and dangling gold chains and so on. Willett played cricket morning, noon, and night. I remember seeing him running up Church Ground, which is the steepest hill in Nevis, backwards and forwards.
Mm-hmm.
You don't find that anymore, even though there's so much money around. Maybe we haven't documented the game well enough. As a matter of fact, in 2013, when Leeward's cricket turned 100, Willett was honored in Antigua, and then president of the West Indies Cricket Board, Julian Hunt, said he is not certain that we are fully aware of what Willett really achieved, and it has not been documented. That, to me, was a call to action. So Nevis has taken things a bit lightly. Take, for instance, a few months ago, a bronze statue was erected on the grounds of the Museum of Nevis History. It's a statue of Alexander Hamilton, who was born here, left here at age 8, went to St. Croix, and went up to the United States, became the first Secretary of the Treasury, and his image is on the $10 bill. He spent 8 years in Nevis. And I don't blame anyone for leveraging that to draw American tourists to Nevis. So I accept that, even though there was a bit of an uproar of among Nevisians saying, what have he done? What had he done for Nevis? Now, last week or 2 weeks ago was the first anniversary of the Malcolm Gishard Park donated by the Chinese government. And the premier spoke at that, and he said that annually Malcolm Gishard's birthday will be celebrated, and said that a bronze statue will be erected. 2 weeks before that, I'd made a post suggesting ways in which the government could commemorate the 50th anniversary. One was to declare that day El Camino Willett Day. 1, 2, to erect a statue at Grove Park of Willett. The premier didn't say a word. That, to me, is an acknowledgement that our leaders do not appreciate enough what Willett achieved. I don't think they understand. Some of them are not involved in the game. Now, when we had the opening of the exhibition on Monday, permanent secretary from the premier was there. I delivered books to him on behalf of the library and the museum, the sports museum in Nevis, one to Willett, one to Tessa Howell, and 4 others. And he made it known that the government, he had seen communication that the government was supporting the dinner, maybe by giving the accommodation free, maybe putting in some dollars, etc. But we have heard nothing from the Minister of Sports, nothing from the Premier outlining how the government will commemorate this occasion. Maybe they don't understand how momentous it is because, like you, the Premier never played any significant cricket. So the Cricket Association, myself, and the library are out there doing things to commemorate, but we don't hear anything coming from the government. So I don't think we have allowed people enough to appreciate our sports people. Last night, I got a very interesting call from the UK. John the Dentist Maynard played for Nevis. Now, he, Howard Williams from St. Kitts, for instance, Derek Parry from Nevis over the years have brought sporting teams from England to Nevis. Now, they've heard about my book, and they've got on to John Maynard to find out how could they access the book. So I told him it's available on Amazon. He said, no, all of these players are insisting that those books must be autographed by El Camino Willing. So what is John Maynard doing in collaboration with those persons seeking to get this book? He's ordering the books from Amazon, sending them to Nevis to me to be allowed, Willett will be allowed to sign them, and then he will find a way to get them back up to England. So those people understand the value of sports tourism. I don't think our governments do. I've been wondering this morning, where's Kim Collins, for instance? I know I heard he had been given a job in St. Kitts, but I don't see him on the television. I don't hear him on the radio. These islands need to begin to do some work in sports tourism. Last Thursday, I visited the Sports Museum. Just said I'll pop in. Inside, I met two couples. They were standing next to the Willett statue, which is not bronze. And basically, they were asking the curator certain questions. And me having stepped in and having written the book, I got involved in the conversation. They were asking, how tall is he? What kind of bowler was he? And we had a very interesting chat. And then the curator said he's writing a book. I was able to share the link with them. They live in Toronto, Canada. They have played in the Toronto Cricket League, but they no longer play because they say it has been overrun by Indians and Pakistani. By Saturday, they messaged me to tell me that they have purchased their book on Amazon. I say that to say that we can do a lot more through sports to promote the game. Now, I was absolutely pleased last Friday morning when the phone rang, and when I picked it up was Dame Marcella Liebert. She called me to congratulate me and told me that she was moving ahead to order her book. I found that very interesting because she, of course, played with victorious netball teams in the Caribbean Netball Championships in 73 and 78, along with Trent's mother. So she understands the value of sport and what it can do for the country. And I made a post to that effect. I've not had a single call from any official in Nevis, whether Minister of Sports, Premier, or whoever. But then we're always happy to say that St. Kitts this and St. Kitts that. You have me on this morning. DJ Marishaw had me on last Wednesday. Chris Collins called the day after I released the book, and I'm going to be appearing in his show in Leeds, England. I got a call from another national in Connecticut, and I've been on. No media house in Nevis has approached, except for the hardest working man in sports, Curtis Morton.
It's Steve Manners. It's 9:30, and I want you to. We have to wrap. We have a Korean filmmaker who happens to be in Nevis at the moment. Steve coming on next, but just before you go, I want you to tell people where they can get the book. I know it's available. I actually went to the Amazon page and I saw. I think it costs $27, right? Sounds like a deal.
As a matter of fact, I'm just learning a lot about Amazon. Last weekend they dropped it to $21.50. Last night when I checked, it was at $28. I think it's a publicity tool where they want people to rush in and get it. It's available on Amazon. I don't have copies on hand. And there's a bit of consternation on Nevis about that. Nevis and St. Kitts are in the microwave age where they want everything instantly and they want it at their fingertips. So the expectation is that I would write the book, walk around and deliver it to every person. I'm not going to do that. I brought in a couple of books for the benefit to pass on to people who have contributed to the book. But when I crunched the numbers to bring in 500 books, for instance, it cost me $4,045 US. Round that off at about 12,000 EC. And based on the freight for the couple of books that I've brought in to donate, freight will cost me about $4,000. These books were supposed to arrive since the Saturday before I got them last Saturday. And I had to go every day, call every day. It was a bit frustrating at West Tech in Nevis. So I'm not going through that process because before selling a single book, I would have expended $16,000 in addition to production costs. You had to get graphic artists, you had to get layout artists, and all other costs. You had to get somebody online to format the book. And if I were producing it on, say, Kindle or any other format, each one is a separate cost. So I've decided that I've brought it this far and that people will have to go on Amazon to get it. Some of the older folks, one man told me in the supermarket, Lord Manners, what do I know about Amazon? Well, I didn't know too much about Amazon before that either. What I did when I completed my manuscript on December 31st, I handed off the rest of the project to my daughters, who are Amazon gurus. They order clothes there, they order phones there. And so they took it to the end of the process. They worked with the numbers, decided on pricing. They track it every day. And so what people need to do is get a child or a grandchild. I can bet you that it's a sports season, and every child in Nevis and in St. Kitts is going on Amazon to get sportswear and different things so that they can look flashy on the track. Engage your children and grandchildren in allowing you to get that book. One gentleman called out to me in traffic yesterday and said, I've been trying to reach you. I went to his place. I was at the courthouse apron because a petition case was going on. And when I went to see him, he wanted to know, he's a middle-aged man, how to get the book. And when I told him Amazon, I could see the consternation on his face. So I told him about getting younger people engaged. And he said, oh, okay, I'll get my stepdaughter in New York to order mines. So there's a way to do it. Send it to a U.S. mailbox. People travel between these islands. There are American flights every day. But it's a step too far for me to be walking around Charlestown to say, could you buy a book? This book has taken 3 years of research. I did it on behalf of the Nevisian and Kittitian people. I believe everybody should get a copy of this book because this is our story. And that's why I wanted to have the exhibition in the collaboration with the library staff during Black History Month. So that's the status of the moment, but I get calls every day saying, man, bring in one for me because I want an autographed copy. Well, if you get your copy, I'm not going anywhere. My pen is still handy. I've got two right here next to me. I'll sign you the copy, but it's a step too far. The other thing is, many people may not know this, books are not stuff to be sitting down in boxes. If I brought 500 in, that could be about 30 boxes of, well, no, not that much. Maybe 10 to 15 boxes that I will have. I don't want to be stumbling over them in the house. So it was a good feeling when I received mine. When I took it up, I nearly jumped out of my skin because it has a nice shiny cover, the left-hand corner. That's Johnny Howell. Willett is bowling at Grove Park, which is now renamed the E.T. Willett Park.
Yeah, hold it up, hold it up quick. We gotta wrap now though. Hold it up to the camera so we can get a look at it. Yes, there we go. Steve Manners' brand new book on Elkamita Willett and his historic forays in cricket. Okay, Steve, we gotta leave it there. We've got another guest coming up next, and you can join us at any time in the future. We'll be sure to plug the book and let people know they can go and get it on Amazon. The title is Father, Son, and Offspring.
Yes,
Yes.
good
Okay.
time would be March 9th, which is the actual date. So in another just over 2 weeks, call me if you need me. I'm right here.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you guys so
Okay,
much for
Steve.
having me. And Trent, don't forget to do what I ordered you to do for the father of Nevisian batsmanship, Livingston Clement Sargent.
Okay.
Over
Well
and
said.
out.
Well said. Steve
Thank
Manners.
you.
9:36. Don't forget, we got Iara Lee coming up. She's a Korean filmmaker. That's coming up next. Island Tea Time. Let's get a word from